Life on the American frontier was far from the romanticized version we often see in movies. In reality, it was filled with harsh challenges and constant struggles. Settlers faced extreme weather, isolation, and the threat of diseases without modern medicine. Food was scarce, and people often had to rely on hunting and farming in tough conditions. The lack of infrastructure made travel dangerous, and conflicts with Native American tribes added to the perils. Life was grueling, and survival was never guaranteed, making frontier life truly difficult.
Water was dirty and hard to come by. Access to clean water was a persistent challenge for many settlers on the frontier, particularly those who did not secure plots of land near rivers or other water sources. The primary solution for obtaining water was to dig wells near their homes. However, the quality of the water obtained from these wells was often compromised by contaminants such as seepage from nearby outhouses and barns, rendering it unfit for consumption without boiling. This added an extra layer of complexity to daily life, as tending fires for boiling water was a time-consuming and labor-intensive task. In addition to well water, settlers relied on rainwater for their needs. However, collecting rainwater posed its own set of challenges, as containers used for storage would inevitably attract mosquitoes and accumulate dirt, requiring careful skimming before the water could be used. Despite these efforts, obtaining a sufficient supply of clean water remained a constant struggle for frontier families. To mitigate the shortage of clean water, many families were forced to make daily trips to distant water sources, adding hours of labor to their already arduous daily chores. Despite their best efforts, hygiene often took a back seat to conservation, as families rationed their limited water supply. Bathing became a weekly event for many, with entire families sharing the same water, which would also be reused for laundry purposes. The scarcity of clean water underscored the harsh realities of life on the frontier, where even basic necessities were in short supply. Practices such as reusing bath water and licking plates clean were born out of necessity rather than choice, highlighting the lengths to which homesteaders had to go to conserve precious resources. Clean, readily available water, taken for granted by many today, was a luxury that eluded most pioneers, serving as a poignant reminder of the hardships endured by those who ventured into the untamed wilderness in pursuit of a better life. Native Americans attack. The myth of the frontier often portrays Native Americans in a simplistic and distorted manner, depicting them as a monolithic, hostile force standing in the way of progress. Conversely, the West is romanticized as an untamed wilderness waiting to be conquered by brave pioneers. However, this narrative overlooks the complex and tragic reality of Native American experiences in the West. In truth, life for Native Americans in the West was incredibly challenging, marked by forced displacement and violence at the hands of settlers and government authorities. They were systematically removed from their ancestral lands to make way for incoming settlers, often facing brutal and deadly consequences if they resisted. Despite the portrayal in Western films, instances of Native American violence against settlers were rare compared to the widespread violence perpetrated against Native communities. Treaties and agreements made between Native tribes and the U.S. government were frequently violated, leading to further dispossession and marginalization. Promises of land and resources were broken, leaving tribes confined to increasingly smaller reservations with limited resources and opportunities for sustenance. Moreover, the deliberate decimation of the buffalo population, a vital resource for many Native tribes, was orchestrated by the government as a means of weakening indigenous resistance and forcing compliance with federal policies. The hardships faced by pioneers cannot be fully understood without acknowledging the profound injustices inflicted upon Native American communities. Their displacement, marginalization, and systematic oppression are integral aspects of the frontier experience, revealing the darker realities of westward expansion and colonization. Any discussion of the challenges of the frontier must confront this harsh truth, recognizing the deep and enduring impact of settler colonialism on indigenous peoples and their lands. Dealing with waste. While Eastern American cities were advancing with the development of sewers and the adoption of indoor plumbing, homesteading families were left with rudimentary outhouses in their backyards as their only sanitary facilities. Some settlers didn't even bother constructing proper structures and resorted to using bushes or uncovered holes for their needs. Moreover, the nature of homesteading necessitated the ownership of various animals, resulting in accumulations of manure that often had little practical use beyond being piled up. In preparation for winter, many families stockpiled buffalo chips near their homes. However, during the summer months, the decomposition of this waste emitted a noxious odor that permeated the air, creating an unpleasant and unsanitary environment. The stench not only attracted flies and mosquitoes, but also infiltrated the interior of pioneer homes. With few pioneers able to afford screens for their windows, these pests became an unavoidable nuisance, plaguing daily life. In the absence of adequate sanitation measures, pioneer families had to contend with the discomfort and inconvenience of living in close proximity to waste. Flies and mosquitoes, drawn by the odor and abundance of organic matter, infested homes, making simple tasks like mealtime a constant battle against swarms of insects. Children were often enlisted to swat away flies from the dining table, highlighting the pervasive presence of pests in pioneer households. The challenges of sanitation extended beyond the summer months, as the freezing temperatures of winter presented their own set of difficulties. Outhouse seats would become coated in frozen feces, necessitating the use of shovels to remove the waste. The harsh conditions of frontier life demanded resourcefulness and resilience from pioneers who confronted these sanitation challenges as a grim reality of their daily existence. Starvation was frequent. Pioneers relied on trading their crops for essential goods at the local general store, where they could purchase staples like flour alongside occasional luxuries, such as coffee and white sugar. However, the reliability of these supplies was often questionable, as some general stores resorted to cutting inventory with cheaper fillers like plaster or sawdust to save costs. Yet, for many pioneers who lived far from town, trading trips were infrequent, sometimes occurring only twice a year. Consequently, a shortage in crop yield could leave them with little to trade, making the acquisition of even basic necessities a constant struggle. These crop shortages were frequently beyond the pioneers' control, often stemming from natural disasters like droughts or swarms of locusts. In 1874, for instance, a colossal swarm of 12 trillion locusts descended upon the prairies, darkening the sky and decimating entire fields of crops within hours. This catastrophic event left homesteaders without any means of sustenance or income, underscoring the precariousness of their existence in the face of environmental unpredictability. No amount of toil or perseverance could mitigate the devastating impact of such calamities. Pioneers were forced to endure the dire consequences, grappling with the harsh realities of frontier life in the wake of natural disasters. These challenges underscored the fragility of their livelihoods and the resilience required to withstand the unforgiving conditions of the frontier. Loneliness and depression. Socialization was a rare luxury for pioneers, whose daily lives were consumed by the demanding tasks of maintaining their homes and lands. The relentless cycle of chores left little time for visiting neighbors or engaging in communal activities. Moreover, the physical isolation of frontier homes further compounded the sense of solitude, with the Homestead Act of 1862 stipulating that married couples were entitled to 320 acres of land, resulting in homes being situated a considerable distance apart, typically half a mile from one another. While occasional community gatherings, such as quilting bees, offered brief respite from the solitude, the harsh winter months brought an end to such opportunities as the bitter cold made it impractical to venture far from the warmth of the hearth. Women, in particular, bore the brunt of this isolation, as their responsibilities centered around the home, leaving little room for social interaction or personal leisure. Though the concept of mental health was not well understood in the 1800s, numerous first-hand accounts suggest that many pioneers likely grappled with profound feelings of loneliness and despair. The relentless toil and isolation of frontier life undoubtedly took a toll on the psychological well-being of settlers, with symptoms that align closely with modern diagnoses of depression. The challenges of pioneer life extended far beyond the physical demands of survival, encompassing a profound sense of social and emotional isolation. The sparse population density, coupled with the demands of agricultural labor, meant that pioneers often lived lives of solitude, with few opportunities for meaningful social interaction. As such, the psychological toll of frontier life was profound, leaving an indelible mark on the mental well-being of those who ventured into the untamed wilderness in pursuit of a better life. Horrible deaths. Accidents were an ever-present threat in the perilous world of homesteading. From being crushed by a wagon wheel to mishandling an axe, the potential for injury lurked around every corner. Even while hunting, the danger was palpable, with the risk of a wild animal attack looming if one couldn't reload their gun in time. These types of mishaps were all too common, highlighting the inherent hazards of frontier life. Moreover, the cramped living conditions of frontier families exacerbated the risks of illness. When one member of the family fell ill, it was almost inevitable that the rest would soon follow suit. Tragically, entire families could be devastated by a single bout of sickness, with multiple children sometimes succumbing to the same illness. In the close quarters of wagon trains, where hundreds shared limited water sources, the spread of disease was rampant, leading to outbreaks of deadly conditions like cholera and dysentery. Dysentery, far from a mere punchline, posed a grave threat to those on the frontier. Its severe diarrhea could swiftly lead to dehydration and death within a matter of hours. When disease struck a wagon train, the consequences were dire. The deceased were often interred in shallow graves, a makeshift solution that offered little solace to grieving families. The relentless hunger of wolves ensured that the dead were never granted the dignity of a peaceful resting place, as they would often dig up the bodies, leaving loved ones unable to find solace in visiting their final resting sites. These grim realities underscore the harsh and unforgiving nature of life on the frontier. Accidents and illness were constant threats, reminding pioneers of the fragility of their existence amidst the vast and untamed wilderness. The toll of such hardships was immeasurable, leaving scars both physical and emotional on those who dared to carve out a new life on the edge of civilization. Your whole day. The prevalence of depression among pioneers is hardly surprising, given the relentless nature of their daily chores. The primary focus of their existence revolved around ensuring their families had enough to eat, a task that consumed the majority of their waking hours. The unforgiving land of the Midwest demanded constant attention and labor to coax crops to survive, adding to the burdens of daily life. Men typically devoted their days to hunting and tending to the farm, while women took on the responsibilities of gathering plants, preparing and preserving food, and managing various household tasks. Winter presented its own set of challenges, particularly the need to stockpile an adequate food supply. The laborious process of canning fruits could occupy hours of a pioneer's time, while preparing meat for preservation through salting, brining, or smoking required careful attention and patience. Keeping fires burning hot enough for cooking and warmth was an essential task, often monopolizing much of a pioneer woman's day with constant adjustments and maintenance. Beyond food preservation, women were burdened with a multitude of other duties. Sewing and mending clothing by hand was a time-consuming necessity, as the luxury of sewing machines was non-existent. Laundry was washed laboriously by hand using tubs and washboards, while the absence of modern conveniences such as vacuums and running water made cleaning a strenuous and time-intensive task. Caring for animals added to the daily workload, with milking cows, mucking barns, and feeding livestock occupying additional hours of labor. The relentless cycle of chores left little room for respite or leisure, with pioneers facing each day knowing that new tasks awaited them tomorrow. The absence of breaks or vacations meant that days were spent in a constant slog of toil, contributing to the mental and emotional toll of pioneer life. This profound sense of duty and hardship characterized the lived experience of pioneers on the frontier, offering a stark contrast to the romanticized portrayals often depicted in popular culture. Family. When a pioneer family decided to leave their home, they did so with the understanding that they might never see their family and friends again. This emotional hardship is a recurring theme in first-hand accounts from pioneers, especially from women, who often expressed deep sorrow over the separation from loved ones. The daily demands of tending the land left little time for anything else. Farming required constant attention and labor, making it impossible for homesteaders to take time off for visits back home. Moreover, the journey by wagon was incredibly slow and arduous, effectively ruling out the possibility of vacations to see family. While pioneers could send letters back home, the postal system was slow and unreliable. It was not uncommon for letters to take up to 6 months to receive a response. The infrequent and delayed communication exacerbated the sense of isolation and disconnection from family and friends. This isolation was a significant aspect of pioneer life. The vast distances and the slow pace of travel created a profound sense of loneliness. For many, the move westward meant a permanent severance from their previous lives. The emotional toll of this separation is evident in many letters and diaries, which often convey a deep sense of loss and longing for the familiar comforts of home and family. The decision to move west was not only a physical journey, but also an emotional one. Pioneers had to grapple with the harsh reality of permanent separation from their loved ones, a reality that added a poignant layer of difficulty to the already challenging life on the frontier. Winters were brutal. Another misconception about frontier cabins is that they were warm and cozy during the winter months. In reality, the walls of these cabins offered no insulation, barely serving as a barrier against the wind. As a result, the temperature inside was nearly as cold as it was outside. Fires, which settlers relied on for warmth, were ineffective at heating the space because the warm air quickly escaped through the poorly sealed walls and roof. Sod houses, or soddies, provided slightly better insulation compared to log cabins, but they came with their own set of problems. The roofs of sod houses often leaked during rain or snow, leading to damp and uncomfortable living conditions. Despite this marginally better insulation, keeping warm was still a significant challenge. Maintaining a fire was essential, as it was the primary, albeit inadequate, source of heat. To ensure the fire lasted throughout the winter, families needed a stockpile of wood roughly the size of the cabin itself. On the treeless prairies, wood was a rare and precious resource. Consequently, homesteaders had to find alternative fuels. They often turned to dried buffalo dung, known as buffalo chips, which they collected and used as fuel. This resourceful solution, however, provided minimal heat and did little to combat the harsh winter cold. Surviving winter on the frontier was a grueling experience. The fire, though a critical element for survival, offered only a modicum of comfort against the relentless cold. The harsh winter conditions made life on the frontier arduous and miserable. Settlers faced a constant battle against the elements, and the romanticized image of a warm, snug cabin is far removed from the harsh reality they endured. The lack of adequate insulation and the scarcity of reliable fuel sources made winter one of the most challenging times for frontier families, revealing a much starker and more difficult existence than the idealized version often portrayed in popular culture. Housing was inadequate. When a homesteader staked a claim to a piece of land, they were given 5 years to improve the land and construct a dwelling. Most settlers, however, had minimal financial resources, and nearly half lost their claims before the 5-year period ended. This lack of capital made affordability the primary concern when building their first homes. In many parts of the frontier, trees were scarce, so settlers often built homes out of sod instead of wood. These soddies were dark, perpetually infested with insects and rodents, and prone to leaking and collapsing during rainstorms. The walls were made from strips of prairie sod stacked together, and although these homes provided basic shelter, they offered little comfort or protection from the elements. In regions where trees were available, settlers preferred to build log cabins. However, these cabins were far from the cozy refuges often depicted in popular media. The process of building a log cabin was incredibly strenuous. Settlers had to fell trees with simple axes and haul several tons of stone for the foundation and fireplace. Each log could weigh over 500 pounds, and many men had no help to lift them, making construction slow and labor-intensive. Completed log cabins were typically one-room structures, about 10 by 20 feet, with a low ceiling of 6 to 10 feet, depending on whether the builder had assistants lifting the logs. The floors were dirt, and it could take years before settlers could afford to install glass windows. The small space meant that children shared a single bed in the loft, while parents slept in another bed directly below. Most beds were simple constructions of wooden planks or straw covered with quilts. The furniture was basic and uncomfortable, often handmade from available materials. Pioneer families were large, often with up to 10 children, and all indoor activities took place in that single room. This meant that privacy and personal space were virtually non-existent. Every aspect of daily life, from cooking to sleeping, happened in close quarters, creating a cramped and challenging living environment. The romanticized image of frontier life overlooks these harsh realities, revealing a life that was much more difficult and less idyllic than commonly portrayed.
Please like and share if you find the video content interesting and useful. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel and comment below so as not to miss the upcoming interesting videos. Thanks for watching.